Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The-Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guests are Mr. Liudas Rimkus, Head of Marketing and Communications for the Swedish bank SEB, based in the Baltics, and Ms. Akvilė Staniūtė, the Chief Operating Officer of the SOMA agency, a division of Havas. Well, I am delighted to welcome you both to the show. Liudas, Akvilė, it's a pleasure to virtually see you both, especially from my early morning and your later afternoon in Lithuania. So congratulations on an amazingly innovative campaign, and I can't wait to talk about it. So again, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Hi, good morning.
It's a great pleasure. It's a great pleasure. Well, look, let's start very broadly for our international audience. Just tell us a little bit about SEB Bank and its presence in the Baltic region. I believe that the bank is guided by a strong belief in entrepreneurial minds and innovative companies, and that they're key in creating a better world. So please tell us about that.
Yeah, so SEB is the Swedish origin bank that is having the Baltic operation. Actually, it has an international presence across the world, including the United States. But when it comes to retail banking, it is operating in Sweden and Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, 3 Baltic states. And it's among the largest banks in all of the 3 countries.
Oh, that's interesting, because sometimes a lot of people around the world aren't quite as familiar with some of the business connections between the Nordic countries and the Baltic countries. So this is quite interesting. But I think we'll hear a little bit more about that, because you've been quite inspirational to a Swedish company. But let's start with the origins of why this campaign happened. From what I understand, and it's often interesting how out of a crisis comes innovation, but SEB had suffered a little bit of a crisis several years ago when one of your customers received a fake message pretending to be a scammer from SEB Bank. And I'm sure this happens all over the world, but this really shaped the foundation of your campaign. Can you just talk a little bit about that, and then we'll go into the solution?
Yes, that was that case when the lady had shared the story on the social media. It had triggered, if I'm not mistaken, more than 10,000 reactions and views at the same day, and it has, people. It had become viral, and people have been sharing this. But I would say that it was not the main trigger for us to do the campaign, because that was just an illustration how painful it is for society, and this topic sort of became even more boiling and relevant, in the society. And that was the first time when we have decided to take this step forward, to take it bold, and not only to address the issue to the society, but also we came to the agency and asked for solution that would not only address the issue, but also advise people how they should act in the situations like that, because the banking scams unfortunately tend to happen, tend to repeat, and the scammers are getting more and more creative as we speak.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Well, why don't we talk a little bit about this now famous commercial? Who would like to describe it for the podcast audience? Because we'll also add a link to it so that people can see it. But please describe it for us.
Maybe I can start. I don't think it's actually like we would even call it a commercial. It's probably like a project or sort of like an initiative, because, well, at the end of the day, it wasn't just about talking about us and showing how great we are. I mean, SEB Bank, but actually something designed to help people and actually make a difference. So we sort of came up with this fictional scammer, I would call him, this sort of character who became the center of the whole campaign. He was like this arrogant man or woman, just talking, basically in this arrogant tone with the customers, going with an angle like you think a scammer really couldn't fool you, just sort of really going on the topic where people think that, it's only uneducated people or maybe like people from poorer backgrounds who get scammed, which is actually completely not the case. So we wanted to put that to a test, basically. So this fictional scammer was there to really attract attention, because this is not something that you normally see on your social media feed, not something you would normally see coming from a bank. So this was really just there to attract attention and to make people notice the problem, because everyone knows that, these scams are happening, but nobody really thinks about it too much or thinks that they could be a victim of it. So we really wanted to sort of shine a light on the whole issue. And as Liudas mentioned before, going bold with it. And then obviously this scammer is the attracting attention part. And then the sort of the essence of the campaign was this online cybersecurity test, where people could literally go into this like immersive experience and put their knowledge to the test, learn about the most sort of innovative scamming techniques. And there is this SEB expert in the test that sort of gives you advice and tips on how to behave in these situations. It's like audio questions, video questions, and you come out basically knowing how you need to approach these situations, what clues you need to be looking for, and how to simply protect yourself. So there were these two parts, basically, the campaign, this education that's also made fun for you because it is kind of a game and you are interacting with this scammer. And yeah, the scammer that you see everywhere and you are wondering what it is, what's going on, and that's how you sort of get onto the test. So this is the campaign.
You said some very interesting things, and I think that you may not have even realized it, but some of these interesting things, I think, are changing the way we think about marketing today. You mentioned that this is not only about us, but it's to help people and to make a difference. And I think that larger view, whether you call it purpose, and I certainly I'm an advocate for purpose, but I'm not sure that the word alone always encapsulates everything that we mean by it these days. But you actually not only went bold, but you also did a lot of good. And I think and I would say that you're changing the idea of what a lot of people think bank advertising should be about. Liudas, would you like to comment on some of those thoughts?
It's just like you said, I think marketeers nowadays tend to forget, this beautiful era of performance marketing and digitization and everything measurable has a bit, I guess, some marketeers have been carried away with this beauty of performance marketing. And I think the essential part of it is that we tend to forget the brand sometimes, and tend to, when I'm saying brand, it's not only the colors or identity, but it's the values, and it's what you stand for. And I think this is a win-and-win situation, because even if besides the fact that we are helping customers and society to be aware with the topic, at the same time, we are benefiting also ourselves, because all those scam cases, in most of the cases, people who don't really understand how it works are blaming the banks. And we used to joke that in the previous Hollywood movies, the bank scammers were with the masks and guns, and now they are behind computers, and it literally can happen to us, to any of us. Like Akvilė said, the myth, the wrong myth about scamming is that it's only older people or less educated or less tech savvy people. It can literally happen to all of us. And imagine, one day you are sitting and the message comes from your bank with the suspicious link to be opened. And the cases that we have studied is that people are really getting into the trap, and in most of the cases also blaming banks.
No, that's for sure. I mean, I think throughout history, blaming the messenger has always been a big problem. But I assume that now that you've done this initiative, which garnered tremendous media attention, that I hope that people now associate you with kind of owning the topic of cybersecurity, that you're serious about it, you're going the extra mile to help people. In putting this together, were there any challenges that you had to overcome?
I think there were quite a few, probably. Well, one of the things was obviously the bold direction that we decided to go to. And at the end of the day, SEB Bank is a well-established brand in the region with a very clear presence and a very clear messaging and a clear look. And at the end of the day, going bold and going into this direction of kind of breaking the rules a little bit still requires the sort of balance between brand guidelines and obviously corporate brand guidelines, and still trying to go a little bit outside the box. It was this constant sort of discussion within the team, going through every single decision to make sure that, people notice us, but at the same time, we don't go into the direction that's not SEB's essence. So obviously visually and so on, it was quite a bit of a challenge. And also I think timing was quite a bit of an issue, because we started doing the campaign literally as the pandemic hit. It was just the time, and the topic was really hot because people started buying everything online during the first week of the pandemic, especially when you couldn't even go outside. And we understood that this is going to be a great place for scammers to come in and do their job, and we have to roll out as quickly as possible. But then the sort of technical solution of the test turned out to be, it just evolved. It became something a lot more complex than we originally thought it was going to be. So there is this timing issue that you have, but you also have a complex technical solution on your hands. And, with technical things, you can't always speed it up. So it was a bit of a challenge to sort of be really relevant at the time, but also make sort of everything work, and also sort of stand out from the crowd a lot, but still don't go out of the way of what SEB is. So
no, and I think that is a balance that brave brands have to deal with all the time. And I think that not as many break through as you had done. So you obviously, certainly understood a lot. Like, I just have one practical question. While the pandemic was on, how long did it take to create this entire initiative? Was it done in a matter of months or weeks, or how long did it take? I guess working virtually, right?
Yeah, I think it took months, and I think Liudas can basically talk more about the side that it took a long time for him and his team to even put the idea forward and make it happen for everyone, because, well, it is a bold move, and I think that the team on SEB side really sort of believed in it and pushed it forward. But that part still took quite a long time, and then for us to make everything happen, it was a matter of months, not weeks, basically.
Well, but still, that for a complex initiative, that's still pretty fast. Liudas, I have a question for you, because you certainly seem to be someone who thinks very deeply about the role of marketing and maybe how it's changing. But would you say that our digital world has now shifted the responsibilities of brands?
I just simply think that the ways we do marketing and communication have not only evolved, but I would say changed dramatically. So if I would compare which skills marketing and communication community has to possess nowadays, it sometimes makes me scary. And sometimes I call my team in the Baltics, universal soldiers. And that's true, because, you have to the tech savvy skills are already like hygiene. It's a mandatory skill. Then added the social media listening, communication, crisis management, brand awareness and understanding how branding works. Loads of those, and not even mentioning the performance marketing, cloud-based solutions, sales automation, big data. And in the United States, you don't deal luckily yet with GDPR, and we have that pain on our shoulders as well. And it's a pain and opportunity, but definitely it's a huge issue for marketing and communication community. So I think it is just the speed of change is so heavy that you just barely catch up, and the only way to cope with that is to be always sharp and always curious, and with your eyes wide open, and not too stuck into your old understandings. And just adding to what Akvilė said, about this idea. Actually, this idea came from agency on my table a bit before. It was kind of lying in the shelf for a while, and then suddenly, we discussed in the top management that I was challenged that, guys, do something, because this scamming thing is just getting crazy. And then we just proposed this bold idea, and it was easier to push it through than I thought, because first of all, the sense of the urgency was there and the push from society. And secondly, we kind of felt that it's a right, although it was risky, we felt that we're doing the right thing. I mean, the purpose was to cure customers' pain, and that made it easy.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think that when you think, despite how difficult it is to be a marketer today, and all of the challenges, all of the tools, all of the knowledge, all of the change, all of the speed, I think that when you do get to the root of something and you understand the implications for the people you serve, as well as for the bank itself, I think the decision becomes easier. And I think the pandemic helped to clarify that for a lot of people who had that kind of purpose-driven passion, for lack of a better way of saying it. You have mentioned, Liudas, performance marketing quite a bit, and I realize that you do work for a bank, regardless of how bold your marketing efforts are. A couple of things. Obviously, marketers have to be more accountable today for business outcomes. You mentioned that a bit in terms of sales and in terms of performance marketing. So how do you balance, or how do you ensure that you're both delivering for the bank and you're serving customer needs? Or if you get it right, are they the same thing?
It's Actually, it looks complex, but it's very simple, right? It says you get what you measure. And I guess, you know, the set of your KPIs of your marketing and communications unit describes the agenda that you are driving currently. So we, in terms of KPIs, we do have both, you know, performance marketing KPIs, sales KPIs, co-KPIs with the business, but also brand-driven KPIs. So we are directly responsible and monitoring the soft KPIs, so-called, or brand perception and brand liking, and we have this meaningful brand survey conducted by Havas agency, which we are monitoring every year. At the same time, us being in a co-captain seat when it comes to NPS and the customer voice. So what I have implemented in our organization is that we are taking every year after the surveys are conducted. You're not able to save the world in 1 year, but we are taking like up to 2-3 biggest customer pains that marketing function can influence. And we are injecting these 3 pains into our plans. So it naturally becomes like, you know, not only the products that you need to sell, but also some customer pains that you need to fix. And of course, there is quite a small amount of those pains that can be fixed by communication and marketing, right? But there are some, and we take them seriously.
No, I think that I'm very impressed. I'm very impressed not only with your attitude, but the fact that you say that it's simple. Maybe you have the magic of knowing how to distill marketing down to an essence, which is you know, help solve problems and can do good. Let me just, speaking of doing good, can you tell me a little bit about the results of the campaign?
So talking about the exact numbers, obviously the main thing that we wanted to achieve was people to complete the test. The more people are better equipped to deal with scammers, the better we sort of accomplish our mission. And originally we had a sort of very hard KPI. 12% of people who come to the test have to complete it. So go through the full 10 questions. That was sort of based on previous similar work that we have done. But actually, in the end, we did have 28%
Wow.
of people who come onto the test actually completing the whole full thing. Basically, when people go through the first 4 questions, they are invested enough to sort of complete the thing to the end. And I think the other thing that we were really happy about and really proud of was the sort of the response that we got from people. So of course we couldn't measure it in numbers, so like millions of engagements on social media, but it was the response with that engagement that sort of really struck us. People commenting how useful it is, tagging, you know, their families, their mothers and fathers to complete the test. We know that some teachers picked it up and did the test in schools, in their classes. Obviously, national television picked up the topic, invited SEB cybersecurity expert to talk on the topic. Lithuanian police, for example, invited people to take this test to be better equipped. So it's basically the general the way people received it, and we were basically proven right that people need this type of thing. So all the response showed us that yes, they actually really do need it. And even after we finished the campaign, people still kept coming to the test and still completing it without any advertising. So that shows that, you know, this is a useful tool that people simply need.
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Liudas, let me ask you a practical question. Did it make a difference to SEB Bank in the Baltics?
Yes, definitely. It made it, the vibe that it created and the results of the campaign, what Akvilė described, definitely were I think that was, to be honest, our most successful campaign in 5 years. And the amount of awards that we got, it just proves it. But the sad part of it is that it's never-ending process, and we cannot, although we were happy with the trophies, but this is emerging issue, and the amount of scams is increasing, the amount of techniques is increasing, and it was so interesting that even my colleagues from competitor banks, to whom we usually compete or talk only via the banking association, they have, some of them called me and said, we would gladly share your test because it's as relevant for us. But I think it escalated wider to the country's banking associations. And actually that's the next step that we are already planning for this year, and we have already planned it and budgeted it in the banks association together with other banks, because my biggest, to my surprise, the topic was way broader than we thought. So we thought that it should be the next step should be the awareness campaign where all countries involved. So it's not just SEB or our customers, but it's the wide society, and we need quite significant ATL campaign, and we are joining now the forces with other banks. Estonia and Latvia has already done it last year, and in Lithuania will follow this year.
That's amazing, because I think just in talking about shifts in marketing, I think part of leadership and doing something right and something that's good for customers suddenly creates a lot of, I won't say unusual collaborations, but it does enable you to collaborate with other partners just to make it even bigger. Maybe that is a responsibility of leadership, that you'll even collaborate with competitors if it is the right thing. And I think that's just a huge change in the direction that we're going. And I think that what we're sometimes seeing now, and there's a lot of research to prove it. I mean, you've mentioned some of the Havas studies on meaningful brands and so on. But I think we're seeing that people now, interestingly enough, have almost more faith in certain brands or certain corporations than they do in the government. And not that there's anything wrong with the government, but you just talked about how an initiative can cross country borders. And I know there are borders that have a very, very strong association, but this is very different. Thank you for telling me about that. What next? What next is there for SEB Bank?
Yeah, so just like I mentioned, the next step is us leading the talks in the banking associations, exporting this idea, because we definitely we need something bigger than that, and that's the plan for this year. Probably we will be using this test and this campaign, for this tech-savvy and digital society. But even to address this topic and that it becomes more relevant, we just need to scale it. And for me personally, it's a public secret, right? Nothing to hide that banks are not the beloved part of the society. The perception towards banking industry is, I think, sometimes banks were blamed for being too far from people, or having too cold or too corporate tonality. I think that's a good sample of, and my personal challenge is how to make banking brands more human, more appealing, and closer to the people. And it's a tough nut to crack, but I think for us, for marketeers, that's a hell of a mission to make banking brands more meaningful, and to, I think sometimes the banks are not deserving this hate or criticism from society. You know, banks are an important part of the social processes, and when you with campaigns like that, you just make it more human. You make it more closer to regular people, and hopefully more appealing. So.
No, you're absolutely right. And I was talking to someone the other day who runs one of the big marketing associations. It turns out happens to be out of New York. But he was saying that one of the evolutions of marketing is to forget about whether it's business to business or business to consumer. It's suddenly about business to humans, and doing what you can, you know, to, I guess, help humanity in the process. That might sound like a big leap for some people, but I think that you captured that beautifully. And I admire you both for your ideas and what you've been able to accomplish, and how you were willing to be bold and find that balance within the corporate world to, I would say, be uncompromising in getting out on a marketing initiative that has had this much traction. So I thank you very much for taking this time, and I hope we can continue to talk, because I think that many people, many marketers around the world will find this sort of thinking quite inspirational. The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories.